Welcome to Impact Innovations, where bold ideas meet real-world solutions. Join our host, Dr. Angela Gustis, as she dives in deep with thought leaders, change agents, and innovators who are making waves and moving mountains. So buckle up. Let's get ready to laugh, be inspired, and make an impact together.
Welcome to the Impact Innovation Podcast, where we spotlight inspiring professionals who are making a difference in their fields by driving change, fostering innovation, and overcoming challenges. I'm Charity Hilton, and today we're thrilled to be joined by our CEO, Dr. Gustis and Kim Lightfoot, a seasoned leader, consultant, and change agent. Kim has over 20 years of experience with the Maryland state government, where she dedicated her career to improving systems and services within the Family Investment Administration of the Maryland Department of Human Services. She is now the CEO of First Balcony Consulting and a value consultant with CMEG and Associates team, where she leverages her expertise to help organizations navigate complex transitions and implement innovative strategies. A fun fact about Kim and Angela, they met over 10 years ago while working together in the Family Investment Administration. Their shared commitment to leadership and innovation has brought them back together in this exciting new chapter to their careers. Today, we'll explore Kim's journeys to become a consultant, her insights into change management, and how leaders can successfully implement technology and new approaches in a traditional environment.
Well, thank you, Charity. I appreciate you. Welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Angela Gustis, but as I tell everybody, just call me Angela. Kim, I am super excited to have you with us today. I think we're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to also teach people a lot of really cool stuff. So welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. And again, I am excited for what we're going to discuss and share with all of our listeners today.
So, before we really start digging into it, let's just start with, can you just sort of share a little bit about your journey from working for the state to becoming a consultant? Like, how did you make that transition, and what really inspired you to make that leap?
Well, I would say after working for several years with Maryland state government, one of the things it provided me was a deep understanding for the necessity for innovation. And working in various departments, under various administrations, it really helped me to see and to focus on what is important for human capital development, regarding innovation, return on investment, and a whole slew of other things. The turning point for me came when the agency transitioned to 100% telework, to remote work. I realized there were numerous people, agencies, even outside of the government, that were contacting me regarding issues that they were associating with remote work. But in actuality, it was regular old human resource management, managing their human capital in relationship to their divisions or departments or companies' goals and mission, and having that in alignment. So that's kind of was the turning point for me, that I said, wow, I feel like I have this insight. It can't be unique, so let's share it.
That's really interesting that you say that, because a lot of people that were having challenges with, I'll just say HRs, like sort of that bucket, or working with people, they pinned it on them working remotely because they felt like they couldn't see what they were doing and things like that. But in actuality, it's because you hadn't developed your team in a way that they were able to be productive without you standing over top of them. So it really was a leadership issue more than an employee issue. So I find it interesting that you bring that up, because I don't think a lot of people look at it that way, because nobody wants to look at themselves, right?
Exactly.
It's always the fault of the people that work, the people that work for us. So with that said, when you transitioned into being the CEO of First Balcony, well, actually, before I even ask this question, where did you come up with First Balcony? Like, I know the story, but I think our listeners would like to hear the story, because it's a cool name and has a great concept behind it.
So when I thought about a name, because, there's a million possibilities, And then I envisioned how I like to serve the people who work with me or for me, and understanding the difference between being in the middle and then being from the balcony. So the name came from this concept. My view is when you view an organization or a situation from the balcony, you have the ability to predict, to forecast, because you're high enough away from the mundane or the little stuff, right? Where you can see and say, this is what's on the horizon. This gives
Mm.
you a full vision. If you think about a theater, you're in the balcony, you could see a full vision of everything that's going on, the sides, the front, the back, but it's close enough where if I need to get down to the orchestra, if I need to get down on stage, I can get down on stage and I can be of assistance, not just based on the knowledge of information that's happening today, but based on what I've been able to forecast from my view from the balcony. So thinking about first balcony, well, in the other side part, balcony consultant was already taken. So, but first balcony, I said, okay, we'll be first. Who doesn't like to be first? We're going to look at everything from this viewpoint and really to be able to encapsulate how we're going to serve um, our staff, our teams, and just ourselves. I think it gives you the best view.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that story. And I tell it periodically when I talk about the work that you do and talk to colleagues about you guys. But I just wanted you to share that story. So with that said, HR is a big thing. Like, I mean, there's so many facets to HR. So tell us a little bit about like what is your focus and how you define success for your clients and the work that you do with them.
My primary focus would be focusing on leadership development through training, through assessments, strategic planning, change management. And I like to think about starting with CEOs and organization industry leaders and how can I help them to become more emotionally intelligent aware. I think that's a part of managing and helping a company to be able to move forward in this space.
So, starting the a top-down approach is really super important, right? Because, we can teach people how to do things, but if the CEO or leadership team in general is not on board or doesn't um, implement the things that are necessary, it really does impact how we're able to work. So, you've talked about like some of the leadership work that you do. You talk a lot about change management and especially like working in more traditional environments like a place like
Mhm.
healthcare or behavioral health. And, as you know, with the work that we do together in partnership with organizations, we work with a lot of behavioral health and healthcare organizations. So, what are some of the biggest challenges that you would say that you've seen that leaders face in trying to like introduce innovation and because you talked about innovation and the lack of innovation in certain environments that you've been in. Tell us about some of the challenges you have around, you know, or that not that you have, but that leaders you've seen have around innovation and trying to bring more innovation into the workspace.
Well, I think a big part, especially thinking about healthcare professionals, it would
Mhm,
be the competing demands. In that space, most people go into healthcare because they want to help people. They want
mhm,
to effectuate change. So thinking about innovation, that's going to shift how they're doing their work. And I think it's important for leaders to have clear objectives and for their goals to be clearly spelled out and to ensure that their team understands the why. Like, why are we doing this? This is changing how I'm helping people. And some people may misinterpret that to you don't want me to help people the way I know how to help them. So providing that executive support and engaging employees early on. So not doing these things often lead to more serious problems with change. And there are a couple of questions that I do like to address with leaders early on in our conversation.
mhm.
Um, so one of them is,
Y'all about to get
why
some
is
good
it
stuff. Y'all about to get some real good stuff. I just want y'all to
okay?
listen in. Go ahead.
Woo! I like to ask, why is this change or innovation important to them?
Mm,
And having people to explain that or just to share that with me, then that helps them to be able to format their communication. Because why is this important? Why does this even matter?
mm,
And who are their internal and external customers? Often people think about their customer bases solely being external, but you have internal customers, and who are
mhm.
they, especially in relation to this innovation? And also to have them to reevaluate or to examine their long and short term goals. How does this innovation support, impact, or impede their short term goals? And last, this is one that people will say, wait a minute, what about this innovation is non negotiable?
Oh,
And why?
wow.
Right? Why?
Wow.
So if you have a new idea, new strategy that you want to implement for your organization, department, or team, what thing about it is non negotiable? And if someone says, well, nothing, I'm going to ask them to dig a little deeper.
Mhm.
And then, or if nothing is, then why? And having that why, that will help to build buy in. Because when you're presenting information, you want people to do something differently. Doesn't mean it's not the right move, but people are
Mhm.
going to ask why. And I would often say, the people who ask why, you already won with them because they're inquisitive, they're
Mhm.
open. The people who don't say anything, that's who you need to have your why for.
And, you bring up something that really, really interesting. If there's nothing that's non-negotiable about the innovation you wanna do, why are you even doing it? Right? Like, if there's nothing that's like, "Yeah, you have to do this," or, "We have to move forward with that. There's no way we can." They don't if there's nothing that's that important that it's a non-negotiable, then what's the purpose of the innovation? So if you say nothing, then it's like, well, why are you even doing this? If there's
Mhm.
nothing that's that important. Because
Exactly.
if you feel that way, then you know your team's gonna feel that way, and then you're not gonna get the buy-in, and you're not gonna get I mean, so it's like it really trickles down. So I think that is really I mean, you gave us some really good stuff, but I think that that's really a huge piece. If there's nothing in there that's like, "Yeah, if you can't get on board with this, you can't be a part of the team." And if there's nothing in there that says that, that's an issue in itself, right? Wow, that's a really, really good point. That's a really good point.
And to add on what you said, not being a part of the team in HR, working with leaders, and HR's function is to provide strategic support for
Mhm,
CEOs, for industry leaders, for people in charge, right? So that's the goal. And
mhm.
thinking about human capital, and sometimes where there's innovation, change, or just productivity issues, it is okay for some people not to be a good fit. And
And
sometimes we can encourage or embrace them in other aspects of our organization that will be beneficial for them and for us. And then sometimes it will be beneficial for them to grow outward. And it's not a bad thing. Um, so that's something I like for people to understand. Not that HR is the big bad boogeyman, right? To tell you get rid of this person or that person. But if it doesn't connect, and especially if they're in a pivotal role where their understanding and support is imperative for everyone else, your innovation is going to suffer. Your team morale will also suffer as well.
you know, you're going into such major stuff, and I think about it in working with a lot of behavioral health organizations, especially, CMAG, we work with about 80% of our client base are either healthcare or behavioral health organizations. And so, like you said earlier, people get into the work because they wanna help people, right? And
Yes.
oftentimes, we really struggle with separating that sort of case management, and I'm speaking for myself, not for other people, but, like, learning how to be a case manager with some people, but when you're working with your staff, you can't always have that case management hat on. But there's that piece of us that really cares about the people, that and the team and our interaction with them and things of that sort. And so when you say stuff like it may be necessary for them to move on or to grow out of the agency, it's like, what? No. We don't know. That's not, because it's like it's not like we just build widgets. Like we work with people.
Exactly.
And so that is a real thing. So I would venture to say that that's probably one of the larger challenges you have is helping behavioral health and healthcare organizations recognize sometimes you gotta just let people go. And it's not because I mean, it's one thing like, oh, well, you smacked such and such, we gotta fire you. Like, or you
Yes.
stole such and such. Like, I mean, those are the easy terminations.
Mhm.
Not please don't get me wrong. No termination should be easy, but it's like so clean, right? Like
Mhm.
you have broken policy or you've broken the law. Those are easier terminations, but when it's just not a good fit,
Exactly.
or you have somebody in a role that's in a leadership role, like you shared, that isn't buying in and it is impacting how you're able to innovate within the organization and the changes that you're able to make because you have, whomever, I don't want to call a name because because somebody will be like, why are you talking about, but but why are you calling out this person, you know they've been here forever. They've been a part of
Mhm.
the organization for years, and we've had situations where we've had folks that have been with us for a long time, but for whatever reason, it just didn't seem like it was a good fit anymore.
Mhm.
Tell
And
us a
that's
little bit.
okay.
Yeah,
And
it
that's
it
okay.
it
Yes.
is, and this is where having a consultant working with us as a team is so super imperative because I know personally I've been able to call you because you work with us as a consultant, but then you also help us in other businesses that we own to handle our HR stuff. And it is huge to be able to call you and say, okay, this is the situation. And
Mhm.
sometimes it is hard to have you say, like, well, Angela, maybe. And I'm just like, "No, I don't know," "Well, can't we try one more thing?" But having that voice at the table is so super important. But digging a little bit further into sort of helping deal with when you have those
Mhm.
people, like, can you maybe share some examples of, like, when you have had to encourage an organization to help someone, as there was a woman I used to work with. She used to say, "We need to help them free up their future." I'm like, "That is so indignant."
Yes.
But,
Yes. I
it's
like to
not
say grow
necessarily
outward. I like to say
grow
grow
outward.
outward.
That sounds
Grow
much
outward.
better than helping people free up their future. That was not nice. But it's hey, but, so tell us about a time that you've been able to help and, like, what were some of the strategies or things that you were able to sorta help the leadership team see
Mhm.
or things that they needed to do to move in that kind of a direction when they were in that situation?
Exactly. So thank you. An example that comes to mind, thinking about an organization where this person was in I would say, middle to senior leadership role, and there were changes that were happening. They were updating technology. They were trying to upskill their workforce. And the person, and often, as you said, the person may have been around for a long time. The person may be endearing in many other ways. And I think about it this way. We all may love our favorite type of soup, right? So let's think about, I like French onion. I like a little chicken and rice, right? And that person could be sweet as I just a sweet person in general, but I don't need sugar in my soup.
Oh, wow.
So so when I'm thinking about what is the work, what is the mission, what is the goal, where are we trying to get to? And is this person adding sugar to my soup on one side, or is this person on the worst side, right? Because that to me ruins my soup. Or is that person not in the right fit? Were they advanced to a leadership position because they have 15 years of tenure?
Mm.
Do they understand? Are they walking in their position? So I like to ask these questions. What is this person doing that is truly leadership? So let's talk about what leadership is and what have you done as a leader to give them these skills? I'm going to ask the leader to take a look at themselves as well. And if you promoted this person or hired this person because they're sweet and they're nice and they like to coordinate the office parties, then they're a leader of office parties. They are not leaders of a division or a department, right?
That's why I love working with you.
It's different things, and they can still be a leader because we need those people. We need those
Yeah.
people in organizations that are going to support the culture aspect, right? So maybe they're the director of culture and employee engagement, but they are not the director or manager of how we get things done, how we produce information for our internal and external customers. Because usually this person, that may not be the fun part of their job. And I'm not saying any part of your job has to be fun, but you have to like part of it, right? And if part of your job is when the CEO, when Dr. Angela Justice says, this is just for an example, we are now going to move this new innovation and we're going to provide this. That person, and we will call them Balconia, because there's probably nobody's name, right? We'll say Balconia cannot say to her team,
Balconia.
well, Dr. Gustus wants us to start doing this. I don't know why, but let's go ahead and see. With that whole introduction, the team has to make a decision. Am I team Gustus, CEO? And what does that do for my relationship with my immediate supervisor? Or am I going to be team Balconia and maybe try it, maybe listen in the meetings, maybe pay attention a little bit in training? So you've already, and they will say, I didn't say anything. It's how you said it. It's how you presented it that I don't know why. If you didn't know why, then that's for the communication with Dr. Gustus. Can you talk to me about this? And even for the communication moving forward, right? So I like to tell if you have a new change or a strategy or something you're doing different and you're meeting with your leadership team so they can start rolling it out. You can meet with them on Tuesday. And I would say, because you have access to their calendars, that's one of my other things, right? You have access to their calendars. And you can say to them, take a day and think about what we shared. And Wednesday, I'm available, or Thursday, because we shared it on Tuesday. Wednesday, I'm available for 15 to 30-minute conversations if you want to go on my calendar to talk about after you've had some time to think about it. On Friday, we're going to do an all staff. We're going to meet with everyone to share that. And I would really appreciate and expect for you to keep this in confidence as a member of the leadership team until we've had our all staff meeting on Friday. I think that is perfectly fine. It gives them a chance to have reactionary time because maybe it's going to change everything about what they do. Let's give them a moment to think about it. Let's be clear, they can be mad about it. And that's what that one-on-one opportunity is. So a person can't say to their team that next week or Friday after the meeting, well, I don't know why we're doing this. And if they don't know why, it's because they haven't explored the opportunity or even given you the opportunity to answer that question for them if it wasn't answered in their introduction. So some of that speaks to emotional intelligence. How are they able to receive information? How are we able to give information? And I share with middle management that they are such in a perfect space, and I'll use the word perfect, because what they give and how they give to their teams impacts their teams in ways that they don't often think about when they say things cavalierly. So if someone says to someone who's maybe frontline worker, well, I don't know why we're doing this, and How does this change make it better for us? And their supervisor says, I don't know. So now when they're in contact with the CEO or someone else higher, they have this whole other air about them. How does that benefit them? So I think as a supervisor, your number one priority is to develop your team and support your team. That middle manager has not supported or developed their team.
Mm, that's good. That's really good. And, people talk about communication as if it's simply this concept of, can I write a strong email, or can I get up in front of people and do a training or stuff like that. But communication when you're in the process of innovation or change or anything like that, would you agree to say that it's probably one of the most important? I mean, aside from, we know having a clear vision is really important, and communicating that clear vision. We hear that all the time as leaders, having the ability to communicate that clear vision. But having communication strategies of how this information gets out to everybody, that's what I'm hearing from you. That's not always captured when people start talking about change management. It's all about the vision and having certain things in place and all those kinds of things, but not specifically, what is your communication plan
Mhm.
around? And again, we talk about communication plans with social media and websites and marketing and all that kind of stuff, but I think sometimes we forget about developing out communication plans for our internal customers, i.e.
Exactly.
the team. So I mean, you hit on some really, really, really strong points that, as much as I've worked with you for, oh my heavens, how many years has it been?
Probably close to 15.
Yeah.
We met, I think, in 2011 or
2000
2012.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Wow. Anyway,
I was
sorry.
only I was
I
only
dig
12.
Sh
Yeah.
please shut up. Please shut up.
You
Please. Celebrating how many anniversaries of that 12th birthday? Right. But I mean, you're just, every time we talk about stuff like this, I continue to learn more. Or as you're talking about it, I realize, oh, that's why Kim had us do X, Y, and Z. I I get it. Like, it makes sense, and seeing the benefit of developing out that communications plan for internal stakeholders is super, super important. So I want to shift a little bit because, we've
Mhm.
talked about innovation, and, of course, we're in the CMAG team, we're big on technology, whether it's healthcare
Mhm.
technology or other types of technology that we try to bring to the table to, help with productivity and things of that sort. And I know that that's something that's super important to you. And I say this lovingly, but you're definitely a nerd. But when you start talking about technology, like what, especially in the human resources space,
Mhm.
how does technology really play in driving meaningful change, especially in those like more, traditional environments? Like we talked about those people that may be on the team that may be a little more hesitant about
Mhm.
technology, but like, how does technology play a part, especially from the HR perspective with innovation?
Mhm. So I'm gonna answer that in 2 parts. So
Okay.
probably part of the question you didn't ask, but I'm gonna add that into my answer. But I'll
It's all
start with your
good.
question, right? So I think when we think about technology and HR and behavioral services and just working with clients in general, I think the biggest impact is automation and AI. Is how can we use or how do we use technology to improve efficiency, remove redundancies? And just as a quick example, what can we do to help caseworkers with entering their notes in your EHR system, right? How can we make
Mhm.
that more fluid so it's not a thing? So there's technology available right now that can do summaries, that can help with that whole process.
Mhm.
Also, and this is what you'll appreciate as a data nerd yourself, lovingly, right? Making data-driven decisions.
Mm.
I'm gonna pause there, right? Data underscore driven underscore decisions, bold. So it is not, I mean, we all have to go with our guts sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but it is awesome to be able to look at statistics and say, for example, why are we open on Thursdays until 8 when there's nobody there? But on Wednesdays, we have people that are waiting till 6 and I'm paying overtime. That's a data-driven decision. This is not anecdotal. This is not, it's so busy. No, show me. Show me. And I also, this is a chemism right here. I think everybody that works, so if you work somewhere, I don't care where it is, there should be a report that supports what you do. So if there should be a way for me to, and I'm saying as an employee, for me to say, this is what I've done to support the vision, mission, and goals. People need to be able to have that language with them. So how do you get that? Data-driven reports. I worked somewhere when I worked for the state. I used to have all my directors. I need a monthly report. And they said, well, where am I going to get it from? I said, from the work that you do. And if it's no work that you do, and that was the end of my sentence, right? So I need them to fill that in. So a person, she says, well, I have an admin. I don't know what I'm going to have her do. I said, well, what does she do? I said, so maybe you don't need that admin.
Uh-oh.
So there was just a question. So then she spoke to the admin person. The admin said, oh, I can quantify what I do. So this person was doing travel, responding to inquiries, managing this person's calendar. I said, you hadn't even, we know what's on the job description, but you hadn't even taken the time to acknowledge all the work that they're doing. So maybe if there's additions, so you're just saying they're just doing work, or maybe sometimes it's extra space, or they're doing something that's redundant. Like, why are you doing that? So having people to write a report, so this person was able to say, I've taken 40 calls about this thing. If this person's getting 40 calls about this thing, what aren't we communicating to our external customers? So that type of information allows you to make data-driven decisions. But how do you get that? If people aren't capturing it, you don't know. I think technology gives us the ability to have enhanced customer engagement. So not only can they call us, so maybe they'll have a portal where they can put questions, or imagine this, recommendations. They can share. They can be a part of your marketing strategy. So I have a customer and they're on the portal and they're saying, I want to get some of this more in geotech and I'm doing this. Oh, and then there's a link where I can push a button, tell somebody about it, and they can share it with their friends.
Wow.
What? So if my friend told me this thing is great, maybe and they're only telling me because they think it would be of interest to me. And they're sharing that with me. And on your website, on your portal, you get to trace and say, this person emailed this person. So now you may be making a follow-up, or this person could be calling. That's technology. It's like thinking about it that way. And then a ways for collaboration. So there'll be other agencies, departments, organizations that are working on something similar, or maybe something completely different than you've ever heard of. Technology allows you to do that. And one thing that we kind of inched on a little bit was maybe your workforce transformation. As you are upskilling and becoming more technology driven, there may be people on your team that they say, wait a minute, I wasn't used to doing this, or this is kind of big brother for me. But explaining to them how this benefits them. Wouldn't they prefer for their tasks to be more streamlined? And it's not, people think, oh, it's micromanagement. That's a word that takes me a whole different place because it's often used incorrectly. It often
Yeah.
is. It's used incorrectly,
Yeah.
but it's not micromanagement. It is removing things that don't have to be done. So maybe your position, and I'll use this as an example. If your position is to, here we go, open the door. That's your job. Your job is to open the door when people come there. You get up, you unlock it. If we have technology that has a camera outside, that has a bell system, and an ability for you to push a button to unlock and lock that door, while you, instead of you're getting up, going to the door, now you have a record of who's coming in. It's increased security. You know, you think about what schools have where you can show your ID. If you have something like this, you already know who's coming in. You can already prepare your internal customers, if that's my job, right? I'm opening the door, I'm getting them. So I'm already, hello, such and such. I'm on the computer letting them know your appointment is here. I don't have to wait for them to come over and say what they want. I already know. So what else can I be doing to increase my personal skill set? And I've already increased it because now I'm using this additional system. So I think thinking about innovation that way, where it's a plus, but I have another list of questions. So bear with me here. This is the part you didn't ask. So
No
and
worries.
I'm picking on leaders, but when people come to me and they talk about, well, I'm doing this change, and another set of questions I have, what is your biggest challenge that this change is supposed to mitigate or rectify? What is it? Then I say this, and most business owners, business leaders, they can probably rattle off 5 of these, but I'm only asking for 1 or 2. Tell me 1 or 2 problems that you absolutely have to start or solve to make your innovative goals. If there's not a problem, right? It doesn't
Then why are
mean
you doing it?
sometimes it's not a problem, but just if there's a problem, right? Being able to articulate it. I am going to switch to this new EHR system because my current system or process does X or Y, or doesn't do X or Y. So what exactly is that? And is there anything that is keeping an organization from meeting their goals? What's keeping you? If you could have anything you wanted, what is stopping you? What keeps you up at night? What 2 things about your business or organization that you wake up at 3:31 and you're saying,
Why are you talking about me, Kim? I don't understand. I
right?
thought this
And
was just the interview. I
and
know
you
you were going to
say
talk about me.
and you say, "What?" Right? Or then my other question is, have you looked for a solution?
Mm.
Because sometimes people have problems and I got a problem. Okay. Have you looked for a solution? How have you been
Wow.
dealing with it? If you haven't, if you've just been holding on to your problem, that's okay. But who wants to hold on to a problem? And what would it take for you to be interested in an alternate solution? So let's say you have your problem, you thought about your solution, but what would it take for you to be interested in something different? And being open, that's a great benefit for any leader, because I can think most leaders have thought about, this is something that I want to do, or this is how I want to do it, and move forward. All, and not really shared it with anyone. And then once it's all done and shiny and the bow is on it, someone raises their hand and says, well, couldn't we have done it this way? And then it's like, well, why didn't you say something? Because it wasn't communicated. Or even having that in the back of your mind, that, is there a way to do this different? Even though the way I thought is great, but could there be a way?
And that goes back to that communications plan. So, like,
Exactly.
knowing when to start talking about it. Because sometimes it is important to hold things close to the chest.
Yes.
But at what point do you start telling people about it so that they can get on board, so that they can share other ideas? Because the goal of being a leader is to develop a team of people who are smarter than you, not little clones of you, because that's just weird,
Exactly.
right? And so if I have all these people on the team, I have people like you, Kim, and Renita, our CPA, or Joanna, who handles policy, or Charity, who's our office manager, or Spencer. You have all these people on the team, but I'm creating stuff in a vacuum. Now I'm not using all of that intelligence. And also, how am I going to get buy-in? Because when I present it, it's sort of like, well, why didn't you ask me?
Or worse,
I'm
or worse than that, or worse than why didn't you ask me? Because once again, I didn't mean to cut you off, but to me,
oh,
that
no.
that question, why didn't you ask me? That person is still interested, engaged, and wanting to be a part of it. The worst part is you share your new innovation. Okay,
Okay, I see that.
because I'm done.
Yeah,
Or
because at that point, they don't. They're just like, well, she didn't ask me, so she don't want to know. Wow.
and then I get to, you've heard me talk about commitment versus compliance. So
Yeah.
then you get compliance. That's the worst thing you want, is a person to only do what you tell them to do. How in the moon could any one person know everything that a person is supposed to do for a project, for an initiative? You want people to have commitment. They want them to know what that goal is, what the desired outcome is, and how can they help that to happen? That's commitment. Commitment is, well, tell me more about this, or I tried this and it didn't work. Because they are committed to make it work, making it work. They're not asking questions about the thing if they're just being compliant. And I think as leaders, we have to understand this too. I've worked with people, and you may know of this person, that if you were in a meeting with them and you said, oh, it's sunny outside, I think it's 30% cloudy, right? This is a person who I would describe as a problem finder. And people say, well, Kim, why do you like to work with this person? Because if there's a problem, they're going to find it. And maybe their delivery could be improved, but they're going to spend time to find out ways that what you came up with is wrong. And that's their intent. But you need people like that, because and you have to be able to have a thick enough skin, right? And then you can help them along better, right? But you're going to need to be open to a person saying, well, I see you want to do this, but did you know that this law just passed? And when they say that in that tone, you have to say, tell me more about that law that just passed.
Because we oftentimes want to shut down the fussy cat because they get on our nerves. But you got to appreciate the strength that they are actually bringing to the table. And that's not easy. That's part of that emotional intelligence. And like you said, having that thick skin, because having those negative Nellies are not easy.
And then giving them more work to do. That's the other part. So people like that, what I found is, and I will say this in the meeting, you are now our designated subject matter expert on this new policy. And what I want from you is X, Y, and Z. And they're like, well, wait. And I say, thank you. And we'll all be looking forward to hearing more.
I love it.
If you already know it, why am I going to sign to somebody else? I trust you.
And that's that, again, that commitment versus the compliance piece. Because, if you think about it, and I'm just going to keep it really real, or as I'm mad I'm getting so old that I can say stuff like this, as the young folks would say. But like keeping it real about, when you have a site visit coming, you're focused on compliance. Do we have this policy in place? Do we do this? Is this door locked? Is this da 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 da? That's compliance. We just trying to get through the test. Versus, how are we actually doing the work because we care about the work?
Exactly.
And while having those compliance people in the team, on the team, that will help you make sure all those T's are crossed and all those I's are dotted, sometimes that may not align with the culture. So finding that balance is challenging. You've given me a lot to think about, and really look at that at a deeper way. One of the things I do want to touch on, but just really, really briefly, because it's something that we don't see a lot of in behavioral health, but it's starting to become more of a thing, is unions.
Mhm.
We really don't see a lot of unions in the behavioral health space. If you could sort of, for someone like, I'll use myself as an example. I've been in the behavioral health space, whether as a consultant in, my work in human services, as an executive director of a nonprofit, working for the state, all kinds of different environments, but don't have a lot of union experience. What would be maybe just one or two quick bullet points of something that you would say to someone that's a leader in an environment that has a union in place, but don't have a lot of experience with unions? Like, give maybe
Mhm.
one or two real quick bullet points of things that you would say, make sure you do this
Yes.
so that, you don't get screwed or make, well, I shouldn't say get screwed, that's not very nice, but like to really make
To make the best of the situation.
To make
Yes.
the best of the situation. Thank you.
To
Yeah.
make the best. Yes.
Y
So I would say, one, maintain open dialogue. When people are talking, there's room for negotiation and
Okay.
understanding what the ask is. Closing off communication. Now everybody's operating in the dark. Um,
Mm.
Being transparent with your communication and timely with it. Know what to say, know who should say it and
Mhm.
when to say it. Everything that shouldn't be
Mhm.
disclosed all at once. And focus on mutual benefits
Hmm.
because there
Okay.
there will be some mutual benefits, and not looking at it as, because you can think about how can you incorporate accountability into your agreement if that's what you're working on, right?
Mm.
So it's not just what maybe we think the union wants us to do as an organization or a company. Okay. So this is what we expect of people who are part of that. And this
Mhm.
is how. So this is a union agreement that if you don't do X, this is the consequence.
Mm.
So thinking about how things can be mutually beneficial and just being collaborative, I would say that.
Okay. And everything you talk about just keeps coming back to communication
Mhm.
and the importance of the transparency, the importance of communicating effectively, and all the things, even when working with unions. And I think that again is something that sometimes we miss in trying to do this work. The importance of being open and honest, and
Mhm.
because people get afraid of the union, right? Like you hear these stories, especially when you haven't been, like, I haven't, other than when I worked at the state, I had never worked in a union environment. Most of my career has been in nonprofit and in behavioral health. So the idea of working with a union is like, "Oh god, the union." It's like you start thinking about the
Yes.
movies about the union, you know what I mean? But, like, how can this be mutually collaborative, I think is something that, people look at a union as a bad thing, but it's not. It adds a layer, yes,
Yes.
but, how do you make it work for everybody, I think is an
Mhm.
important piece, and also it helps you to sort of look at things a little bit more glass half full instead of half empty. So
Yeah,
you can
instead of
focus
saying,
on the good stuff.
mhm.
No, that makes total sense. That makes total sense. Thank you for that, because I think that there are more and more environments where you're seeing things unionized, and there are a lot of us in the behavioral health and human services and healthcare spaces that are not, unless you've worked for like large government kind of organizations or
Mhm.
huge hospitals like a Hopkins where they have unions and stuff, but when you've worked in smaller organizations throughout your career like myself, that's just not a thing that you're familiar with. So I want to just shift into one more topic that we haven't really talked about. We've touched on a little bit, but leadership and vision is huge, right? And so I want to sort of jump and talk about sort of looking ahead, like what are some of the in your opinion, some of the biggest opportunities for innovation in the behavioral health and healthcare space? And like, even if you don't get into specific
Mhm.
opportunities, but like, what are some of the things that leaders can do to prepare for the fact that we are moving into more of a AI tech kind of space, no matter
Mhm.
what you do? How can
Exactly.
leaders better prepare, especially using that HR lens, so that we can be, because and I'm gonna add this other caveat to this question. As somebody walking into my 50s, and I've been doing this work for literally, almost, or a little over 30 years, sometimes I have young people coming to me saying, "Why don't we do this?" or "Why don't we do that?" Like, how do we prepare to stay ahead of the game, but then
Mhm.
also open ourselves to recognize that we may have somebody who's 22 years old who has an idea of technology where we're like, "Wait a minute, you know,
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm supposed to listen to you because 'cause you're 22 and, like, you're
They're
younger than my
22 and
kid."
fearless. They're 22 and fearless, right?
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and that's a plus.
It is, it
So that's a
is.
plus. So I think if I think to your first part of your question, the biggest opportunities, and we kind of talked about this, AI
Mhm.
care and training. How can
Mm,
AI assist with behavioral health?
okay.
You're working on some wonderful things, and you can answer that question in a whole separate podcast
Yeah.
about how technology and thinking about virtual reality. How can you incorporate that? So not
Mm,
just remote, but what can you do with virtual reality? There are all types of new systems out here where if a person has this position or this condition, you can use virtual reality to help in your treatment plans. Now, does that
oh,
support
wow.
more remote work? So there's other things you can do.
Mhm,
Data integration and analytics, big opportunity. So you can make more data driven decisions.
mhm,
And a big thing that people should think about is innovative payment models. How can
mm,
they work with technology to make sure that the payment has less barriers, has less things in the middle of it? For
mm,
any person that provides a service, we think about, I think one of the best influencers on how you do things is how you interact with things in the society. If I have a doctor's appointment or a doctor, somebody I'm going to, and I can make a payment online
mm,
before the visit, an opportunity for
mm.
behavioral health clinicians to offer that. So before the visit, you already have the copay.
I feel like
Why are
you
you?
just talked about a whole 'nother episode. We're gonna get Miss Katrina Jones, who is our billing and
Yes,
credentialing consultant, and really sit and
yes,
talk about, like, I feel like that's a whole 'nother episode we're about to do.
yes.
Yes.
So doing things like that, so the person comes in, then it's not waiting. You are moving people at the rate that people like to be moved because everybody's busy. Now, how do
Mm,
you prepare? Prepare one thing, people should definitely connect with CMAG and Associates to learn more about
I know
value-based
that's
care,
right.
because
Yeah.
value-based care is going to take you to cover these things. So you're gonna be respectful, not saying we aren't, of people's time, of how people are
Mhm,
paying. People can go online and see, "Oh, this is the last time I was saw, it's in my portal." It's easy
mhm,
for them to share that information with their general practitioner, with their dentist. Everybody
mhm,
wants to know this, and you have all that information right there.
mhm,
Investing in technology infrastructure, you have to make a decision where you can only spend a dollar once, right? But where are you going to spend it? Are you going to
mm,
spend it on new mouse pads? Are you going to update your old thing? Or are you going to really make an investment that's going to pay it forward, right?
mhm,
And one thing you said in the beginning of the question, fostering innovation. That 22-year-old, that
mhm,
59-year-old that has an idea, be a space where people feel comfortable with sharing that because they're doing the work. If people don't feel like it doesn't have to be anything formal, right? It doesn't have to be an idea box, right? But it can be a situation where
You mean you don't want
for
us to have a kudos box up at the front
you
where people write
could,
on little pieces of paper?
but you know what? The problem with those are people follow up on it for 2 months. And then it becomes a job for somebody that's an addition and nobody wants to do it. So you thought Balconia's idea was good, but Firsta didn't get
On back
hers, right?
home,
So,
yeah.
Balconia, right? So an innovative way, I know we're over time, but you'll make it work, to be able to do this. Imagine an organization says 2 days a quarter, we're gonna call them our innovation days or something fancy, right?
Mhm.
And one of those, you do 2 days a quarter, one day, all day, team meeting. And I say meeting, it's not a meeting, it's innovation. So let's say you do it once a quarter. The first day or 4 hours, you can do 4 hours. Everybody has 4 hours to brainstorm, to think about something they would like to do, different, brand new, change, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Whatever your regular tasks are, it doesn't have to be the same day. You can stagger it.
Mhm.
But for 4 hours, this is what you have the opportunity to do. If you do not want to participate, please let us know. You don't have to. So do your regular work. But if you want to participate, all right, okay,
Mhm.
that's the
Mhm.
first. Later on in that quarter, everybody, whatever time frame, let's say a full day thing, bring your idea. Let's talk about it. It doesn't have to be a
Mhm.
PowerPoint. It doesn't have to be anything formalized. It could be me raising my hand and saying, "Is there a way for us to get an organization to help us get electronic vans?" I saw this on this TV show where there's grant money available for electronic vans to do X. Now, the best idea is a person will say, "I found this information and this," follow
Mhm.
up. But even if it's just that, then as a team, talk about it. What do you think
Mhm.
that's something that we could benefit from? How would that help us? And then maybe was that person sharing that idea? Maybe your budget person, your finance person would say, "Well, we spend X on fuel every month."
Mm. So you're
And
doing
you're
those
like,
data-driven decisions.
so, and if we
Mm.
look at it, you're talking about 1.5 days, but what could come up? What could bubble up in that?
So really creating space for people to really innovate instead of it just sort of, because I think that, and that's such a great point because oftentimes the innovation can come from the leadership team because we brainstorm, we sit in meetings and stuff. But, and one thing I will say I'm very proud of is when we started doing COVID testing, that came from one of our staff who was
Mhm.
like, "Miss Angela," because, young people call me Miss Angela even though I tell them not to. "Miss Angela,
Mhm.
I was out talking to such and such and this, that, and the other, and, we do mobile phlebotomy. Can we do COVID testing?" And I was like, I
Mhm.
don't know. Let me see. And we started doing research, and that one idea, and this is real, that one idea really and truly helped us sustain through COVID. I
Exactly.
hadn't thought about doing COVID testing
Mhm.
because at that point you hear about the state doing COVID tests and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And we jumped into it and started doing COVID testing and figured it out. And it really did, like, it helped to sustain our organization through that first year, year and a half when a lot of organizations were tanking. We were willing to pivot based on the idea that literally a young woman was walking down the hallway and was like, "Miss Angela, I got a question."
Mhm.
And boom, so it's like being receptive to those young people, because she's not thinking policy, she's not thinking staffing, she's not thinking, she's just looking at it like, "Dude,
She
why
sees
can't
it
we do it?"
happening. She sees it happening. I mean, and this is something that I've
Yep.
wondered why it hasn't picked up as much, because there's a definite need. So this is free for somebody, right? Why isn't there a larger network? I know there's barriers, so we can talk about that another time, for transportation for school-age children outside of the public bus system. So I think about, for example, private schools, public schools, charter schools, after school activities, an opportunity for smaller size vans to people to schedule contracts and say, I'm doing this route. And you can route it, they route deliveries and such, and pick up the kid from school, take him to karate, then take him home. How many children are potentially impacted by this transportation thing? And the finance isn't the issue. It's just, how do I get my kid from A to B? Right? And it could be one-offs. But yeah, you need background checks and such. But that's a given. So there's a lot of space for that. And it seems like and I would say in other parts of the country, it exists on the West Coast, but it hasn't jumped here in this area. And I think that will be something that people will be like, wait a minute, especially with the reduction of school buses for different jurisdictions and some hours where, your kid's outside waiting for their bus for, they're getting home 40 minutes late and now they're missing whatever.
Yeah.
Just different ways. And people already have these buses or these vans, these sprinters. These already exist in commerce. People have them for mobile phlebotomy. People have them for other things. You heard that. And
I did.
so it's like they have them for these other things. So why? So that's something, if you think about it as an organization, what do we have that is in our possession that we don't use after X time or on X? And maybe there's some things you can't, use out for other things.
Yeah.
But
no, that makes sense. That
if
makes
you're
a
in a
lot of
large
sense.
building and you have a big conference room, maybe you could do birthday parties on. I mean, it's different things. If you're not using that space, make it
You
make
gotta
money
get-
for you.
We have space use agreements.
Yes.
I will say, like, there's a couple of organizations that we've helped to get started because we had a space use agreement and we were flexible. We didn't charge people a whole lot of money. It was just, it was enough to sort of help us. But we've helped 2 firearm safety organizations get started. One that is now a multi-million-dollar business, and they started doing their training right here at the CMAG office, doing CCW HQ classes. Another organization doing the same thing. There's another organization that was doing CPR training. They did CPR training out of here. They now have a really nice office suite actually right around the corner from here, where they are continuing to do CPR training and ACLS training and stuff like that. And these are services that we provide. But the thing is, and this, we don't believe in competition, right? And so we provide CPR services, but we can have other people do CPR here too, right? We provide CCW and HQL, concealed carry and handgun qualification classes, and a whole bunch of other classes under the umbrella of firearm safety and emergency preparedness. But we allow other people to do the training here as well, because there's enough for everybody, right? And so when you
Yes.
open your doors to help other organizations get started, because having a brick and mortar is not easy when you're first starting up. We didn't have a brick and mortar for 5 years. And we had colleagues who would let us use their conference room to do training, or let us use an empty office to meet with a client, or, what have you. And so we pay that forward, but it also brings in a little bit of income for the organization. And it's not a sublease. You all can't see me doing air quotes. It's not a sublease. I'm just simply letting you use the space, as an organization. You're not running your business out of here. You're just using the training room or using the conference room, and that's fine. So just getting, innovative is not always about technology. Right now in the space that we work in, it is a huge part of it is technology, but, being innovative is just sort of like you said, like looking at the gaps, right?
Exactly.
And how do we fill those gaps? And going back to that why. So when we look at the gaps and we see the gap, putting together that communication plan for external stakeholders and internal stakeholders so they understand why we're adding this service, because we want to
Exactly.
do this, because we want to help with that. And the more that we take the time to develop that communications plan internally,
Mhm.
the better rollout we will have with our teams. Um,
Exactly.
and and that's huge. And that communications plan is really, really big. And as you said, we're definitely up against time. So I want to go ahead and wrap. I have one more good question I want to ask
Okay.
you. You know, what advice would you give someone considering transitioning into consulting after a long career in government or a similar field? If you could just give somebody one good piece of advice,
Mhm.
what would that be?
Okay. Follow your heart.
Mm,
Prepare for the unexpected. Talk to people that are doing what you want to do. And one thing, well, I'll end with this, right? Don't be afraid to work on your dream. Don't, think about
oh,
how hard you work for everyone else's dream. Don't be afraid to work hard on your dream, even if that means that you may have to work twice as hard for a little bit. But it's okay because it's
mhm.
your dream. It's your dream. And believe that you can do it and be around others who believe that too.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. And this has been absolutely awesome. I'm looking forward to doing some more. I already have a couple other topics I want us to work on. I want us to pull in Katrina and do some stuff around innovation and billing process. And, we get Renita on the call as well. So we can talk about, from a financial perspective, from a billing perspective, from an HR perspective. And let's just go to town and have a good time with it. I
Sounds
really, really have
awesome.
appreciated your time today, and I am 100% sure that people listening in have learned all kinds of great feedback and things to think about, and your questions that you gave us, were huge, and I thank you for that, and I look forward to more time, with you in the future and get you back on the show. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you. This has been absolutely phenomenal. And let's go ahead and wrap.
Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure, and I look forward to speaking with everyone again. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening. Join us next time for more Impact Innovations.